Military Viewpoint with Alberto de Perez. We also have the ADP interview program today with Alberto de Perez. And as always, great Cuban music. So stay and stay and don't go away. On a day like today in the year 1992, the General Assembly of the United Nations passed for the first time a Cuban resolution calling for an end to the U.S. economic, commercial, and financial blockade against Cuba. The vote held every year since that first time, in 1992, 24 years now, was 59 in favor of ending the blockade, 71 abstentions, and 3 against lifting the U.S. sanctions against Cuba, including the United States and Israel. Now this year, the 25th annual vote, 191 countries voted to end Washington's blockade. There were no votes against the resolution, with only 2 abstentions, the United States and Israel. On this date, in 1992, 24 years ago, the first vote on that UN resolution at the United Nations. And on this date in the year 2012, a fire at a clothing factory in Bangladesh killed 110 workers, mostly women. The fire was caused by an electrical short circuit, which spread throughout the poor conditions of the sweatshop factory. It was the deadliest factory fire in the history of Bangladesh on this date 4 years ago. The fire and protests that followed this and other disasters led for a push to have more reforms in workers' rights and safety laws in Bangladesh. Let's now go over to the news desk, find out what's happening today in our national and international news. We're joined by Lena Valverde and Gavin Jones. First, let's take a look at our headlines for this hour.
President Raul Castro congratulates Dictator Kirill of Moscow and Russia on his 70th birthday.
Honduran president arrives in Cuba on official visit.
Colombian government and rebels sign new peace deal.
United Nations says inaction on Israeli settlements, increasing Palestinians' suffering.
And now the news in detail.
Cuban President Raul Castro congratulated His Holiness Patriarch Kirill of Moscow and all Russia on his 70th birthday. Diplomatic sources in Moscow reported that in the message, the Cuban leader wished Kirill, who is also primate of the Russian Orthodox Church, success in his undertaking defending and promoting the unique historical, cultural, and spiritual heritage of Russia and fostering interfaith and inter-ethnic dialogue in his country and around the world. The Cuban head of state reaffirmed our country's willingness and readiness to work towards further strengthening friendship ties between the Cuban and Russian governments and people.
Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernández arrives Thursday in Cuba for an official visit, during which he will hold talks with his Cuban counterpart, President Raul Castro. Earlier this week, representatives from Honduras and Cuba met here in Havana for the first round of bilateral migratory talks. They exchanged on consular issues and assistance to their respective communities abroad. The two delegations agreed to continue negotiations on a memorandum of understanding on the issue that provides the legal framework towards joint actions to promote and guarantee legal, safe and orderly migration flows with full respect for the human rights of migrants. Cuba has repeatedly denounced Washington's migratory policy towards Cuba, particularly the Cuban Adjustment Act and the so-called Brexit policy encouraging irregular flows of Cuban migrants seeking to reach U.S. soil either by sea or through a third country.
Government and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, RTP, have signed a new peace agreement to end the 52-year armed conflict in the South American country. President Juan Manuel Santos and leader of the FARC, Timo León Jiménez, signed the final text on Thursday morning in a ceremony at the Colón Theater in the capital city of Bogotá, in a simple ceremony with the presence of local legislators and human rights activists. Only 800 people attended the signing due to security measures. The first peace accord was rejected by half a percentage point in a plebiscite on October 2nd and had a record low voter participation. After further negotiations in Habana, Cuba, a second agreement was reached on November 12. The new peace accord will now be considered by the Congress, and if passed, will be included in the Colombian Constitution. The majority of political parties in the country support this new agreement, and President Santos is confident it will pass in the legislative branch.
The UN's Special Coordinator for the Middle East peace process has warned that inaction towards Israel's increasingly violent illegal settlement activities is endangering efforts to establish an independent Palestinian state. Inaction has a cost measured in human lives and suffering. Secretary Madlenov on Wednesday, while addressing the United Nations Security Council, calling on Israel to halt its settlement expansion activities, Madlenov noted that such actions are dangerously changing the situation in the region. He emphasized that those who oppose a Palestinian state offer no viable alternative. He added the alternative is an open-ended occupation, a perpetual conflict which breeds anger amongst the people of Palestine and Israel. Madlenov